Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nadhi Awalia Sasty, and today I'll presenting you the Drive by Susan Crispell, and the title is The Justice in a One-Act Drama called Drive. And the one-act play Drive was written by a reporter named Susan Crispell in 1916. It's a site that the outline of the story is based on a true story that Crispell had covered during her time as a young reporter. And it's told in this play that a farmer named John Rake was strangled to death by rope while he was sleeping in the middle of the night. And it's suspected that someone would deliberately rape the man's neck with a rope while he was sleeping with sleeping was his wife. And this form does a five figure that reader or viewers find out more information about Mrs. Rake, who incidentally is the central character in the story. And the reader's pancreatism is a postmodern hematologic approach that embeds meaning lies not in the hands of the author or the text, but the hands of the reader. With this method, the approach to getting meaning depends on the experience of the reader and the extent to which he places himself in the text. And fish view that meaning can be found and explored in the communicant or the reader itself, not in the text. In this case, the text only stimulates the reader to become someone who actively understand a text, message, and problem based on fish. And the reader response theory itself identify the important role of the reader in consider textual meaning, in acknowledging the important role of the reader, and the reader response differs from the early text-based view found in the mechanism or the brain-based psychological perspective associated with reading. That means the place of explanation of the reader as an active participant with the text in the production of the interpreter of the literary works from the point of view of the response theory. And the plot opens in the place of the abandoned farmhouse. The house is a mess with a variety of neglected activities such as unwasted dishes and toss that has been prepared but looks like it hasn't been packed yet. The five people arrive at the house to investigate the crime scenes, including the district attorney guards in the district attorney, Kurt Anderson, the local sheriff, Henry Potter, and the neighbors. They come together to solve the problem of Mr. John Riggs' suspected murder case. Triumph is the title used to describe the overall content of this drama. The use of the word trap also seems to warn the reader not to ignore the trivial things that happen in this life. Therefore, it can be said that this drama implies stories so that reader or viewers can act fairly now by not ignoring trivial things. Problem come as Problem come unexpectedly, like when someone will sleep. Even though we have been warned not to fall when we fall, people immediately think that he fell because we were in a hurry because of this cell. They overlook the thought that might have been there and where the reason why he fell. And even like this are narrated in this one act drama seems to mean to talk about her for not having things legs up when she had to come away in such hurry. In this dialogue on the beds, as Seven, cited by Miss Hale, described the living condition experienced by Mr. Brick like a bird in a cage. Miss Hale said that 30 years ago, Mr. Brick in a minimum foster, a city girl who joined the choir. But since getting married, she left the world of choir and singing. They are not blessed with children, and her husband is always busy of working. Plus his house which is done in a hollow and doesn't see the rod strengthen the reason of Mrs. Reed is a feeling lonely. Mrs. Reed hopes that the presence of this canary can bring some happiness to himself, who has been accustomed to her boring feelings of sadness due to the loneliness. So Miss Wright decided to keep a canary to accompany him to sing and to accompany his loneliness, and Mrs. Wright hoped that the presence of this canary can bring some happiness to himself, who, who has been accustomed to harboring feelings of sadness due to the loneliness. But apparently, the source of Mr. Right is the, the source of Mr. Right is the opposite of her husband's source of happiness. Mr. Right preferred quiet and understood by the sound of canary singing, so to fulfill his happiness and avoid those noise that disturb his peace, Mr. Right had the heart to kill the canary and had the heart to snatch his wife's happiness. And the similar behavior was also shown by Miss Hell, the neighbor of the Mr. Right, that he admitted that a year ago he had not visited Mr. Right. Not that they weren't close to each other, but that because Mr. Hell did not like the atmosphere of the house. And this trivial reason makes him reluctant to visit the neighbors. And Mrs. Howell realized that the neighbor's house was place, not pleasant place to live, but he never asked much less cared about how Mrs. Rake, who for many years lived in the house. And from that previous three characters, readers can find empathy for each other, and they both suffer, but when it comes to finding happiness, they don't think about its other feeling. And the behavior of the three figure is contrast to the behavior of Mr. Hale. The man seems to be the most empathic here because he takes the time to make sure that John really won't follow the phone calls in his busy schedule. And from this simple and trivial behavior, we could tell the tree was a big problem going on at Mr. and Mrs. Wright that morning. And in conclusion, in the story, Rita seems to be invited to focus too much on the fate of the murderer Mr. Wright and continue to look of evidence that guilty party is Mr. Wright just because until the moment Mrs. Wright was still breathing, and people did not assume that Mr. Wright's behavior was not evil, even though the behavior of the Mrs. and Mr. Wright was not known to other. And we can catch that in the story. The story proof is uh, focused to the case and, and the story of Mr. Wright. So that was my presentation. If you have a question, please write down on the chat group. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.